I'm Ali Patterson and welcome to the Paytech Show. Now, if there's one thing that has survived the deadly pandemic, it's e-commerce. Why? Is it the fact that you can't try on the pair of trainers you're buying? Nope. Is it the fact that you have to wait for your items to be delivered? No. It's the payments experience. These e-commerce giants, some of which are more powerful than developed nations, are creating a payments revolution that will change the way that we pay forever. So to find out more, we brought in guests from every aspect of the ecosystem. Joining me in the studio, we have Alex Marsh from Klarna, the e-commerce company that got so big it's become its own bank. Next up is our resident payment expert, Jukka Yliuntinen from Gieseke and Devrient, the payments company with such expertise countries ask them to make their money. And last but not least, we sum up with Peter De Souza from SumUp. So Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Can you give us a bit of a background as to your role in the smooth company of Klarna?
Yeah, it's Alex here from Klarna. I'm the country lead for Klarna in the UK, so I'm really responsible for all aspects of our presence in the UK market, so merchant and consumers. On a personal level, been keeping very well during lockdown. Been up to London a few times more recently, which has been kind of exciting to get a bit of time with the team. But yeah, from a business side, excited to talk a bit more today about what we've been seeing within Klarna over the last 6 months.
So I'm representing G&D, Gieseke and Devrient. Gieseke and Devrient is an old family company. We call ourselves like one of the oldest fintechs in the world because a large part of our business comes actually from the payment. We started, of course, from the currency business. We still do that. It's a large part of our business. But of course, then over the last decades, we have migrated and introduced also the product solution services in the cards, MaxStripe cards, then chip cards, dual interface cards, and then of course this has gone digital. My role at the G&D is I'm representing our digital solutions portfolio, looking the P&L for that one.
So first of all, thanks very much for having us on. It's really exciting to be here and talk about stuff that we love talking about in and around, payments and MPOS. I am head of demand generation for sales and partnerships Europe at SumUp. I've been here for nearly 4 years and I've been in the industry for nearly 8. And I have to say I've enjoyed every single minute of it. Our main focus is acquiring SMEs and specifically nano and micro merchants that are really keen to accept card payments.
So I think it's safe to say that the pandemic is unprecedented. Can I get your take on how retail and payments as a whole have changed over the last few months because of this?
Sure, yeah, really happy to talk that through. I think we do have the benefit with the consumer base that we've built up to over 9.5 million UK consumers to really get a good lens now on consumer spending habits. I think obviously the big trend that we've seen and we've all experienced is the enforced shift to online e-commerce and online shopping. So, all age groups, all demographics shifting to online. I think some of the interesting trends though that we've seen kind of within that, which are worth sharing, is a very consistent kind of pattern across the different markets that we support in terms of consumer behavior with their spending. And really that kind of, the first stage was really consumers stocking up. So we saw 4 stages. First stage, consumer stocking up, so really thinking we're going to be confined within lockdown, we'll stock up. So it's really food and essentials that they were stocking up on, and then stage 2 though was an interesting shift where it was that move where consumers were looking for ways to interact with friends and family. So obviously we had the shift in terms of house party and other kind of mechanisms to interact with kind of friends and colleagues. But from a spending side, we saw that really on like the gaming side, for example, where we saw a big uptick in terms of consumers moving to online gaming. So from a payment side, we saw like 180% uplift in shift to gaming during that kind of second stage, and that was really about kind of interacting and finding other ways to interact with kind of friends and family. And then the third stage was, I think we all felt it, that sense of you were being less active. In the UK, we were obviously restricted to a certain amount of time to go outdoors. And we saw a really interesting shift into kind of health and well-being and exercise. And one of the areas we saw a big uptick, so 105% increase was in running shoes, for example, in that third stage. So people investing in both kind of athleisure wear rather than maybe like clothing to go out in the evening, but particularly, I'm a keen runner myself, that shift where people were looking for ways to kind of keep fit, and the physical benefit also helping obviously their mental benefit. And then what we're starting to see now, and what we kind of see as a fourth stage, is an element of return to normal. So people are interacting more, they've been out of the house more, and that's where we've started to see that uptick in clothing and shoes again. That was an area where we did see a big drop during the early stage of lockdown, and actually we started to see a return there to a sort of a new version of normal. I think an interesting stat though is the latest kind of ONS stats, where we've seen a 44% increase in online purchasing since the start of the year. So it's a huge shift in a very short period of time.
I think that there are of course a lot of developments which has taken place, but I would pick two main things. The other one is that mobiles, they are everywhere. I mean, mobile is the way we do banking and a lot of financial services and more payments, whether it's a kind of a bank transfers, making bills and invoices, but also nowadays more and more doing both point of sale, so really physical payments when we are using our Apple Pays, Google Pays, our issuer wallets. So that's one thing which really has changed. So this is the delivery channel for the banks for all their services, including payment. The other one, which is same time changed, especially in the let's say the physical side of the payment is, and that's very dear to us also because we are producing cards, is that contactless payment has become the thing in the world. So I mean, if you want to go and buy something nowadays in most of the countries, you don't want to anymore enter your card on a reader, enter your PIN. You just want to tap and you want to go. So this is the other thing which has really changed, I would say, on a global scale. If we look a couple of years back, yes, there were countries which had a contactless payment, but now it's everywhere. And maybe actually this brings to the third topic which has changed, is of course the online payment. We had a phenomenal growth rate over the last decade already, but now even more and more during the last couple of years.
So looking across the broader spectrum within Klarna, I think a trend that we've seen, which is pretty consistent, is use of debit cards has been pretty consistent during that period in terms of sort of utilization as a proportion. But we have seen a drop in credit card usage, and that's an area which has been quite consistent. I think people, very conscious of their financial situation, the situation around job security. And actually what we've seen, and I think we see as a positive, is a shift from, say, credit card usage across to payment options such as our own, where you can essentially, we see as a sort of better, safer, cheaper alternative to credit cards in terms of, particularly given the challenging macroeconomic environment, giving consumers interest-free payment options, but also structured repayment. We see that as being really important, and I think that's driven a kind of consumer shift that we've seen over that period, where people have changed their preferences. I think a lot of this does relate to lockdown and the enforced change in terms of people's kind of experience of going into stores, for example, and that move online. And I think the shift where I see it with my parents, I had to sort of train them up on Apple Pay and contactless pay, and you end up with a shift which isn't just a shift from cash to, say, card. It's a shift from cash to contactless payment. In sort of, you've double shifted through payment options. And I think one thing we've seen is that as consumers have moved online, certain groups or demographics are starting to access options such as, say, our payment options, where previously they might not have been, just because they weren't necessarily shopping online so much.
What has been the main driver behind e-commerce innovation? Has it been the customer demand for new e-commerce products, or is R&D the driver?
Yeah, I think it's really a synergy between the two. I was looking up some stats today from Statista around e-commerce, and I think what we know is that e-commerce is growing rapidly. So we have worldwide e-commerce sales in 2019 that topped 3.5 trillion, and that's an 18% increase from the year before. And they're expecting that that's going to double by 2023 to more than 6.5 billion. But to put that into perspective, while e-commerce is growing at that rate, it's still relatively a small piece of the overall pie. So again, their Statista stats show that e-commerce was about 14% of that total global retail sales. But again, analysts are expecting that to grow, at 2% through to 2023. So yeah, what's supporting this growth? I think from an R&D perspective, it's that in 2020, nearly any business, like regardless of size, can have an online presence.
Yeah, I mean, just for context on that kind of shift to e-commerce, a stat that, building on some of the points we've discussed, which I find kind of staggering, is it took 6 years for, proportion of e-commerce to move from 10% to 20%. And then in 3 months, it moved this year, between February to April, it moved from 20 to 30%. So, to that point we were talking about, that kind of shift in months, equivalent to years of shift. And I think, clearly that's then driven, new demographics to shop online. And, an interesting stat from our side is that Gen X has actually been the fastest growing age demographic for us during lockdown, as they have made that move to online. And I think, what does that mean in terms of e-commerce? I think it will drive further adoption by merchants in terms of that move to online. That we have seen splits in demographics between those that shop online and those shop in store, and the fact that online adoption is becoming so high, they'll need to adapt. The types of merchants that trade online will need to adapt. A nice one that I saw during lockdown was some of those savvy garden centres that were using FaceTime, for example, to demonstrate the plants that they had on offer to their customer base, so they could have essentially that online offering despite the fact that garden centres were closed. So I think we'll see some really interesting shifts in terms of the types of products that are sold as more a standard online, but I think also we'll see a shift in terms of marketing. I think the targeting of marketing will become broader, I think, given the higher adoption by such a broad spectrum of age demographics.
You look almost any statistics now, so it has a huge impact on the payment side. There has been, of course, a lot of recommendations also by the banking associations, even governmental levels, that please use now more digital payments if possible. That could be a wallet or any kind of a mobile payments which are enabled in a particular country. Contactless, of course, because you don't need to now touch and make the physical contact. That has increased. And then if you look the growth rates of the online payments, so in UK, I think that in only, was it April, it was kind of a 78% higher number of online transactions compared to a year ago. And you can look almost any market, so there is a substantial growth compared to the trend which used to be still roughly in February timeframe. So it is a big impact. And then, of course, the question is that are these let's say convenient also for the consumers? And then you come easily to the questions that if there are regulations which require strong customer authentication and you would need to do online payments, you would need to, I don't know, in some countries, for example, you have these separate hardware tokens which you need to then tap or generate some sort of a one-time code and then enter that one. Well, not really user friendly. So I think that is now also accelerated the developments in the how do we pay. So we can see that ourselves, for example, but also very much the industry has accelerated also developments to, especially for the online payments, because there we all see that where the market is going, and if you can enable that one, make it secure, make it a nice experience, that's the way to go.
One of the big regulations that's going to level the playing field, so to speak, is strong customer authentication. Do you think that that's going to lower the risk appetite and the level of risk for a bank?
Well, I think it's good from the whole, let's say, keeping the ecosystem on the level that there is a possibility to make secure payments and keep consumers happy, keep merchants happy, and therefore, of course, let's say the financial industry too, meaning issuers, acquiring, and all that. Strong customer authentication is, of course, just 3 words, and more the challenge typically comes how you implement that one. And there are initiatives, like I mentioned, in Europe there are some, but also other regions similar. And then, of course, devil is always in the details. So, and we have seen already that it's not so easy because you need to have certain requirements, yes, fulfilled for the security, but really again matching on this consumer behavior. And therefore, for example, in Europe there are these waivers now given in many countries already twice, for example on these PSD2 requirements. What we see, for example, and how we'll try to help here is that we have now just very recently also announced that consumers can use also their EMV contactless card as a second strong form factor for strong authentication, which is a kind of a neat, in our opinion at least, opportunity to increase both the security, because now you really carry a smart card level secure hardware, and then people are used to tap already. Now they don't tap a point of sales terminal, they tap their own NFC phone, and this gives this kind of a assurance as well as then the good user experience. So I think that there are ways to do it, but then finally it's of course each issuer to decide, because the issuer carries the liability.
So we're fully aligned with the whole SCA initiative, and we're going to follow suit based on whatever the local jurisdiction requirements are for the implementation. So regardless of any other postponements that may happen in Europe, we plan to ensure that we're ready by the end of the year.
What do you think of organizations such as, SumUp, moving from very much physical point of sale to, again, being very, very online and very focused on the e-commerce side of things?
I think that as earlier, physical is still seems that there is, yes, physical touch points. We go and do shopping in the supermarkets and so forth, but more and more the capabilities that are enabling, and especially probably I would say the mobiles, which we carry all the time, having all these apps. The apps are really designed nice way. You can pick and choose things easily, which then kind of brings us to use such a services more and more, which means that really it is a trend toward the online and the digital. And then for some people it's convenience. I mean, I have many of my friends and their families, and especially the ones whether it's a lady of the family or the husband in that family, if they do the grocery shopping, if you have a small kid, so you just want to kind of optimize your time, which means that then you do rather online shopping without spending half an hour driving somewhere, pick and all the stuff, then carry them home, rather than you maybe spend 15 minutes and then it's being home delivered. So I think that these kind of social developments in the society also have a big impact on this trend.
Are retailers going to make the move become more like e-tailers or even hybrids?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the barriers to that are starting to break down, which I think is really positive. So I think there are, as we've touched on, there's many different partners that can now support a merchant to broaden their offering to reach consumers all around the world, which I think is incredibly positive. So that kind of real opportunity, and the key advice that we give to merchants is to particularly to independents, is to really look at which partners can support them best on that journey. Be it from the e-commerce platform that they're using to kind of showcase their goods, be it the payment options that they offer. I think increasingly the demand that we are seeing is for kind of access, for example, from a Klarna side, that we can support them across many different markets. And I think that will become, key, for example, from a fintech side or, a partner perspective, that you can support. And, we've seen that where we've launched in, a number of new markets over the past year. Australia, very exciting. More recently, Belgium, Spain and Italy. And, the demand from existing merchants we work with to kind of activate these payment methods in those markets is really encouraging. And I think that's a common theme for merchants, is that if you've got a great product offering and you've kind of proven that there's a demand and it's relevant for consumers, there are those barriers to be able to offer that to a broader consumer base are starting to fall away, which I think is fantastic. One really exciting thing that we're working on at the moment, and we've kind of just started the journey in the UK and we're slightly further ahead in the US, is what we term kind of social shopping, and that's broadening our role beyond just supporting consumers in terms of control as to how and when they pay, to actually the much broader shopping experience that they have. So supporting them in terms of wish lists, the types of items they want to buy, but then also tracking items if potentially the price of those items drop, so kind of looking at kind of price drops so they can get those items at the best possible price, and then equally having access to our payment methods across basically a whole multitude of merchants. So I think that will be kind of like elevate, I suppose, the support that we can give to consumers, beyond just purely kind of the payment aspect to the whole experience. So kind of curate wish lists of items that they want to purchase across multiple merchants. And I think, again, particularly with that shift to online, but also the fact that for consumers they have had to, there's certain areas of spend that they have ceased. So, for example, travel has been a real challenge. It's not somewhere we're spending so much money, or social life, less money, to actually be able to really consider how best to spend your money, and to track the items that you want to purchase. I think is a real positive. So that's a really exciting development that we're kind of on the journey, and it's evolving, and it all sits within our app as a great experience for the consumer, kind of end to end in terms of supporting their shopping experience.
Well, that's all we've got time for on today's episode of the Paytech Show. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about how businesses you buy from will change and how we're going to pay for things in the future. So thanks for watching and stay safe. Bye for now.